Hello and welcome to our second project where we will learn what is a function, why should we use functions, and what are its benefits when you write a program. Before we write any Python commands, let's define function. So what is a function? A function is a block of code which only runs when it is called. You can pass data known as parameters into a function, and also a function can return data as a result. So why should you create functions anyway? Let's try to understand. Let's take an example of myself brushing my teeth in the morning. Here are the exact steps I take as soon as I'm awake from the sleep. I get up from the bed, rush to the washroom, pick up my toothbrush, apply toothpaste on it, and brush my teeth. Finally, clean my mouth and toothbrush. There were a lot of steps in that process, but those steps would be exactly the same every time I wake up. And that's why I've decided to combine those steps into a mental function. Now, when I decide to brush my teeth, my brain goes into autopilot and I do all of those things without having to explicitly think about each step. Brushing my teeth is just one part of my morning routine that I've turned into a mental function. Let's break down my breakfast process, such as making an omelette. My steps to make an omelette would be mixing ingredients together in a bowl. I pour that mixture into a frying pan. I cook the omelette on one side. I flip it and I cook the other side. The output of that process is an omelette. It's nothing fancy, but I'm a computer programmer, not a chef, right? Just like brushing my teeth, I've also functionalized the process of making an omelette. Here's what it looks like in Python. Alright, right now, the script is simply a series of print statements which represent each of the steps in my omelette making process. What if I want to create another omelette? In that case, I'll need to repeat all of those steps again to create a second omelette. One way I could accomplish that is by typing out all of those steps in the process again. Now I have created Python script that creates two omelettes. I can just print out and see the results. But what if I needed to make more than just two omelettes? If I kept manually copying all of the steps every time I wanted to make an omelette, my Python script would end up being really long. And the longer the script gets, the more likely I am to make a mistake. Since I'm performing the exact same actions every time I want to make an omelette, this is the perfect scenario for us to combine those steps into a single function. Now here you will see the benefits of using functions. The first one is you will have shorter programs. Code can be used over and over again. The second is your program becomes more robust because there is less room to make mistakes. Functions are useful when a program needs to repeat a coded process. Alright, so let's write a function to make omelette. So let me first copy all the steps that I need to include in my make omelette function. The syntax for making function is def, stands for definition, followed by the function name with brackets and colon. Make sure you indent all the information inside. And as I mentioned earlier, a function can also return information as a result. So let's return omelette. Alright, so we are done with our first function, make omelette. Now if I want to make an omelette for myself, omelette 1 equals to notice here, when I type make omelette, I'm basically calling my function definition which I created earlier. To make an omelette for my friend, all I have to do is just another variable omelette2. And call the same function again. Alright, our 2 omelettes are ready. Now we just have to see the results. Remember, the output is going to be whatever we mention in the return statement. In our case, we have omelette variable. So we expect to see a string like a tasty omelette. In order to see the results, we just have to print out omelette 1 and omelette 2. Another benefit of using functions is code reuse. I mean using the same code elements more than once. In order to understand, let's make a similar function for making pancake. As you can see, make omelette and make pancake have very similar structure. Both of these functions use the exact same sequence of cooking steps in the middle. Since I'm doing the exact same series of actions in 2 places, I should combine those steps into a single function. It's important that I create the mix and cook function above the other 2 functions in the script. Let's see how it's done. Alright, so now it's time to call make pancake and make omelette function. So now you understand why create a function with the common cooking steps. For one, we can reuse the code for similar tasks, and second, we can change the code in one place if it needs modification. Now it's time to learn about parameter. It is a variable name used inside of the function to access input passed to the function. I'll modify the make omelette function now so we can pass input objects directly to it by adding an input parameter inside of the parentheses called ingredient. This parameter is a variable name that I can use inside of the make omelette function to access the input value being provided by the user. Now I can create a chicken omelette by typing make omelette and giving it the string chicken as the input argument in parentheses. Now the user is free to input any value as the input argument. For example, I can have mutton omelette by just adding mutton inside the parentheses. Now did you notice I used the terms parameter and argument in different locations. Let's try to understand how are they different. When I called make omelette and I passed it an input value of chicken or mutton, that value is called the argument for that function. Now looking at the function definition, the name ingredient is a parameter for the make omelette function. What if we want to add more ingredients to our omelette? Our make omelette function accepts only one input parameter. One way that I can add more ingredients to my omelette is to add additional input parameters to the function definition. So instead of having just one input named ingredient, I can give the function two input named ingredient 1 and ingredient 2. When a function has multiple parameters, it's important that each parameter has a unique name, so I can reference them individually inside the function. Now that I've given my make omelette function two parameters, I can use the variable names ingredient 1 and ingredient 2 inside of the function when I build my omelette, just like how I used ingredient earlier. However, when I call this function, I will be required to pass it two input arguments, no more, no less, exactly two inputs. If the only thing I wanted to do was make omelettes with exactly two ingredients, then this would work great. But we want fancy recipe called for 7 ingredients and maybe more. So I want to create a function that has the ability to accept any number of inputs. I'll make a new function called fancy omelette and configure it to accept any number of inputs. Here's how I do it. Alright, our functions are ready. Let's try to make different omelettes real quick. Now, let's test our fancy omelette function with multiple arguments. For example, alright, so now you have created a fancy omelette with 7 ingredients with just few lines of code. A good programmer always uses functions when writing a script. A simple code is the best code. We will see how these functions help a lot when we work AI projects. Now I will let you think your own scenario and create your own functions.